Federal government committed to the development of Nigeria's sugar sector. Committee on the African Continental Free Trade Area to submit report January. Nigerian Communications Commission uncovers large volume of illegal deductions set to refund consumers. Plus, OPEC cuts Nigeria's oil production quota to 1.68 million barrels per day. This is Business Express reaching you from our Abuja studios, and as we count down to Christmas, we shall be taking a look at the breakdown of the 2019 budget. I am Muplang Dakok, your anchor, welcoming you to today's edition of Business Express. President Muhammadu Buhari has restated the federal government's commitment towards developing Nigeria into a regional air transportation hub, thereby assuming its place in Africa's aviation sub-sector. Inaugurating the new international airport terminal of the Nnamdi Azikiwe Airport, Abuja, the president also promised to support the actualization of critical projects that will place the nation's airport among the best in the world. Adamu Sambo has details.
A world-class aviation transport facility, the new terminal building of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, is among the 4 such projects being executed by the China Exim Bank loan facility of $500 million, as well as a counterpart contribution of $100 million by the Nigerian government. Second to be inaugurated after Port Harcourt, the facility, designed to handle 15 million passengers annually with the best comfort, has among others 66 check-in counters, 5 baggage collection carousels, 44 immigration decks, 8 screening points, 8 passenger boarding bridges, as well as a 22-room hotel with spa. President Muhammadu Buhari said the inauguration of the project reflects his administration's deliberate policy towards sustaining the development of Nigeria's infrastructure, noting with pride that the governing APC is gradually closing the infrastructural deficit bedeviling the country.
With the commissioning of this terminal, Nigeria is moving towards meeting global aviation standards in facilitation, passenger processing and service delivery in tandem with international best practices. Government officials manage these gateways to sustain the momentum and ensure travelers in and out of the country have best of experience as a necessary complement to the ultra-modern terminal.
The president expressed appreciation to the Chinese government, China Exim Bank, and the Ministry of Transportation for their financial support and various roles played in the successful execution of the project.
This administration recognizes aviation as a catalyst for economic growth, and as such will continue to encourage and support the actualization of projects that will place Nigerian airports among the best in the world.
We will do whatever is humanly possible to assist and give maximum cooperation to your laudable objective of positioning this country to compete internationally as far as aviation is concerned.
As a complementation to this particular project, the road linking the airport to the Umar Eradu Expressway is now also being rehabilitated.
We respect Nigeria, love Nigeria, and support Nigeria. China cannot develop itself in isolation from the world, and the world needs China for global prosperity.
Minister of State for Aviation, Hadi Sirika, was full of appreciation to President Muhammadu Buhari for what he called walking the talk, saying the nation's aviation sector never had it so good. The new international terminal of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport is situated on a 56,000 square meters of land with about 60 meters skywalk that connects the facility to the airport metro station.
President Muhammadu Buhari will in January 2019 receive the report of the Presidential Steering Committee on the African Continental Free Trade Area Impact and Readiness Assessment. He had earlier in July explained why he was yet to sign the agreement, which is expected to increase intra-African trade by 52.3% from the current 19%, although 49 countries have endorsed the agreement, which will enable them to form a $3 trillion continental free trade zone encompassing 1.3 billion people. Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, said Nigeria has not yet signed the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which seeks to remove all forms of restrictions to trade and investment flows within the African continent. He explained that the country has launched a nationwide stakeholder consultation with the purpose of reflecting a wide range of views in the technical instruments. The nation's pension scheme is targeting to enroll about 30 million Nigerians in the next 5 years. This is about 275% increase from current position. Acting Director General of the Nation's Pension Commission, Aisha Dahir Umar, said that the pension sector has 8 million contributors presently and is canvassing other means to increase participation in the scheme to about 30 million people by the year 2024. And as the federal government continues to partner the private sector towards achieving an export-led economy, agricultural exports increased by 82% in 2017 from fourth quarter of 2016, and the Minister of Agriculture says the nation is striving to beat the record at the end of this year. This was at the African International Investment Summit and Expo 2018, where discussions centered on establishing new linkages and developing new ones towards boosting the agricultural commodity value chain. Kunle Adeleye reports.
The Ministry of Agriculture says it is prioritizing development of the export market through the production of cowpea, cocoa, ginger, and other export commodities in conjunction with a network of investors, farmers, and processors to boost investments as well as achieve an export-led economy. This is made known at the Africa International Investment Summit and Expo in Abuja.
Without gainsaying, the implementation of the Agricultural Promotion Policy, APP, the green alternative by the present administration, has made a quantum leap across the various subsectors of the agriculture, and with a strong emphasis on developing effective and sustainable agricultural value chain.
Stakeholders and investors along the agricultural value chain say all countries in Africa must strive towards deepening infrastructure to ensure that quality standards are defined and maintained across the value chain.
We need to harness our commodities rightly and of course market them. It will be good win-win situation, both for those that are mining or that are the farmers, and of course for government that will also have the proper
The federal government has assured the 2019 budget will target job creation to bridge the existing gap. Minister of Budget and National Planning Udoma Udoma, while giving a breakdown of the budget, noted that the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan ERGP, which underpins government's economic recovery actions, is the basis for medium-term fiscal strategy to achieve sustained economic growth, diversification and social inclusion. Details with Leah Katun Babatunde.
The 2019 budget, tagged Budget of Continuity, is one designed to consolidate on the gains of past budgets, precisely the 2017 and 2018, which helped put the economy back on the path of growth. In making the 2019 budget cycle perform optimally, Minister of Budget and National Planning Udoma Udoma says government has put in place key initiatives to improve federal government revenues for proper funding of the budgets.
as all the previous budgets, has been in providing the infrastructure and other support for the private sector. It is the private sector that is going to grow this economy. It is the private sector that is going to create the jobs. The government provides the enabling environment.
Allocations to ministries, departments, and agencies of government, Udoma says, were guided by the three core objectives of the ERGP: restoring and sustaining growth, investing in the Nigerian people, and building a globally competitive economy. 2.28 trillion naira is the allocation for capital spending, inclusive of capital in statutory transfers.
Money for constituency projects and the zonal intervention does not go to the individual senators or members. It goes to the different ministries, because a lot of people still think that the money for constituency projects is given to the senators or members. It is not given.
The proposal shows that the 2019 to 2021 medium-term fiscal framework, medium-term sector strategies, and proposed 2019 budget reflect many of the reforms and initiatives in the ERGP.
There is a gap between what is planned for in the budget and what is actually generated. So we're doing all we can, and very soon we'll be releasing new revenue initiatives, which will include a new set of taxes and excise duties.
The expenditure framework indicates that the bulk of capital expenditure will go to the Ministry of Power Works and Housing to finance critical infrastructure. Overall budget deficit of 1.859 trillion naira in 2019 represents 1.33% of GDP. At 2.14 trillion naira, debt service is 24.24% of planned spending, while provisions to retire maturing bonds to local contractors decreased by 36.84% from 190 billion naira in the year 2018 to 120 billion naira. Personal cost accounts for 52% of non-debt recurrent planned spending.
To further discuss the economic impact of the budget breakdown, we have in the studio an economist, Paul Alaje. Thank you for coming on the program and compliments of the season.
Yes, Merry Christmas in advance.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the 2019 budget is tagged the budget of continuity. What do you make of it, considering the fact that the minister, Udoma, said that government is determined to continue all previous projects?
Yes, you would recall that when President Buhari made presentation to senators and members at the joint session of National Assembly, he mentioned some projects that have been ongoing. And as we speak, some of those projects have not been completed and some of them are still ongoing. So it's a way of spending more money on the project, particularly the capital component above 2 trillion naira for the completion of such projects. So when you say what does it mean, I think clearly is referring to continuation of some capital projects. Obviously, recurrent expenditure, particularly overhead and salary, must be spent because workers has to be paid. At least there is constitutional provision for all of that. Whether the budget is passed in January or not, from 1st day of January, you have to start spending based on the cap that is permitted, that is permissible, allowed from such budget.
Okay, so let's look at the assumptions. 2.3 million barrels of crude per day at $60, and also inflation rate at 9.98%. What do you make of that? Do you think that, considering the prevailing realities, that this is achievable, especially as OPEC has said it's going to cut down on production for Nigeria?
Yes, I think we should have prepared for this even before now, that something like this may be happening to us, because government revenue, particularly federal government, is 50% of what comes from crude oil, and FX, that's foreign exchange for Nigeria, also 90% of what comes from oil production and oil service, oil sales to the foreign community. Now, I've said all of that to say the presentation, it is good to desire 2.3 million. As we speak today, 1.9 on the average is what we do per day. Again, as at yesterday, crude oil price itself was less than $60 per barrel. So now, we were part of the people that projected in 2017, 2018, exchange rate, I mean, the benchmark price should be above $50. 40 something had first been projected, or has been used as assumption when Mr. President was presenting last year, I think November, to the National Assembly. But some of us have argued that it should be up to about 51, 52, 53. Eventually, National Assembly and the executive agreed to do $51 per barrel. Right now, because of so many things happening globally, I think we may need to stand on the part of caution because of Venezuela is supplying oil gun to Russia, is threatening to do same. America is placing ban on Iran. Some parts of EU are saying, no, we're not going to support America this time. We want something. So we're not sure. Or like when analysts and economists use trend analysis to predict what future rate will be, it's fundamentals which you cannot predict happen from time to time. Right? You can see fundamental implication, which is giving us a different narrative entirely. So I think since this is the first presentation, the National Assembly will have to look at it. I'm sure they will also call economics and consultants to help them look into it. I think at that time we will also recommend that Nigeria may need to reduce that figure a little so that we can, I mean, work with reality. It is good for us to hope. If something happened by tomorrow, maybe there is a major crisis, or there is, because if major crisis happen and it affects one of the major supplier price, will go up. Now, this is the attention. This is where I think we should all pay attention to it. Okay. We are projecting 2.3 million at $60. As we speak, we are producing average of 1.9 million, 400,000 shortfall. If we are also not getting the price, then we have revenue issue. Mr. President has said that the major challenge for Nigeria, which many senators and honorable did not listen to, which many Nigerians and journalists are not talking about. The major challenge for Nigeria right now is revenue. He said the last budget, 50% is what he has performed, and he hoped that this budget will perform more. The question is, where and how are we going to generate revenue? Honorable Minister of Finance also mentioned the same thing regarding revenue. So if revenue is the issue, we need to project with modesty and see if we are going to get more. Again, federal government is looking at borrowing less from the budget. So how do we finance this
Let's
budget?
Let's go to that question of financing the budget. So what do you recommend? For us to be able to finance the budget? Is it borrowing or what?
I'm looking at running a PPP for most of government's project, so that private sector have direct injection into government project. For instance, how much does government want to spend on power? Can we get companies to partner? We can do 50% of the payment, while the private sector spend the remaining 50% instead of government spending 100% of all the monies. Apart from that, we're also looking at if government wants to spend money on education, for instance, do we have alternative sources of sourcing all of this money instead of just waiting and expecting that federal government will keep spending some of the money? Again, some bodies that federal government has regarding state and local government, how do we begin to reduce burden on federal government from time to time so that we have more fund to spend on critical things? Then we can say that yes, what we have perhaps is becoming realistic. Again, I think federal government needs to renegotiate what is being remitted to federal government from crude oil. Companies that are extracting oil from Nigeria, they need to pay more.
Budget of continuity has been tied to the ERGP. So how do you see this, especially with government policies?
Yeah, ERGP had projected 3.5% in 2018. What we're doing right now is a bit above 1.8. And it's also projected about 4.5 for 2019, and the president has presented with his team 3.01%. What it means is that there seems to be a gap between our projection and the reality. Now, the question is, why are we having this gap? Now, the federal government is the government that everybody look at, but the economy is bigger than federal government. You have to look at 36 states, you have to look at 774 local government. So I think, like we have suggested, federal government and state government under economic council or forum. I know there is a meeting where the state governors with the economic head of federal government, which is the vice president, need to meet and discuss how do we inject funds to this economy, things that bring economic prosperity. For instance, what proportion of the budget are different states spending? And when we say proportion, what quantity? it shouldn't be less than 60%, particularly at the state level, because the burden, apart from paying salaries, might not be as much. Also, states should be tasked to generate more in terms of IGR so that such money could go back into development. What matters at the end of the day is the capital expenditure that you have put in the state, because if you say that, oh, this is not Abuja, okay, you can assume it's federal government. But when you go to a state like Sokoto State in Arkila, Nigerians use the facility there. Nigerians do business. They're not just people that are indigenous of Sokoto or from Sokoto State that do that. So for me, I think we need to spend more as government. And also when I say as government, I mean both federal government and particularly state government. Also, we need to provide environment for private sector.
So that I can ask you this last question. What do you make of the spending plan? Because the federal government says it is going to put a huge chunk of the money into investment in power works and housing. What's your take on that?
Yeah, power works and housing is really very important. We saw the numbers coming for unemployment from Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, and it seems maybe it's not something many people are proud of. 23.1% from 18.8%. The question is, what is our project selection? If you build a 3-bedroom flat, who are the people you need there? Do you need professors? Do you need doctors? Do you need pharmacists? Or you need economists? The answer will be no, not necessarily. Those people who are don't have so much education, you see them around Wuse Market most of the time carrying their shovels. Those are the people you need. Those are the people that want to be engaged. Those are the people that want to have relatively formal or informal jobs. And I think if federal government goes into mass housing, you are going to mop up most of this unemployment, and they're going to create values. Watch this. Arguments of the available data is saying we have close to 20 million housing gap. But if federal government spent money and tasked state governments to do the same, because we assume that federal government is the only government, we need to also look at what state government is doing. If each federal government, for instance, is leading by 10,000 housing plan, different states are producing 1,000, you have 36,000 plus 36 or 37,000 plus 80 plus 8,000, you have about 47,000 housing solutions we are providing per annum. If you do this consistently for 20 years, there might be no housing gap, because many families will now have homes, then home prices would have dropped, many people will be able to afford to buy land, and we would have grown from there.
All right, thank you very much. We've been speaking with Paul Alaje, an economist and a financial expert. Thank you so much for coming on Business Express. All right, this is Business Express. Remember to send us your feedback via email businessexpress@nta.gov.ng. You can also reach us through our Twitter, and the handle is NTA Network News Now. And don't forget to use the hashtag BizX showing on your screen. Moving on, the federal government has continued to build the Agricultural Infrastructure Fund to the tune of more than 11 billion naira to grow infrastructure and ensure the development of Nigeria's sugar sector. The Executive Secretary of the National Sugar Development Council, Lateef Busari, who gave this update in Abuja, said this is in line with the federal government's sugar master plan. Musbah and Wahab reports.
The sugar sector is one of several through which the federal government has continued to intensify its diversification policy. And the sugar sector, words have been meshed with action, as the Executive Secretary of the National Sugar Development Council says the sector has witnessed significant developments in 2018.
If the kind of thing we saw in 2018 is what we have had in 2014, 2015, we would not be here where we are lamenting, by now.
According to him, the council has saved up to 8.8 billion naira with the Bank of Industry and more than 3 billion naira with the Bank of Agric for infrastructure development, which will lead to attainment of a set target of about 2 million metric tons of sugar to cater for the country's sugar needs. Through various policies, including the backward integration plan to encourage local industries, a number of sugar refining companies have been springing up, with the council setting up 3 mini sugar plants in Ondo, Oyo and Sokoto states. However, the Executive Secretary says, apart from the challenges of infrastructure and flooding facing the sector, smuggling of sugar into the country is also posing threats to local industries.
Every one sugar that is imported or smuggled in translates to loss of job for Nigerians, because people produce there, they created jobs for themselves.
The council wants the Nigeria Customs Service, the Standards Organization of Nigeria, and NAFDAC to step up efforts in combating importation of sugar into the country.
Thank you, Musbao, for that report. Let's now take a look at what is happening in the commodity market as U.S. oil benchmark settles at a 17-month low. This is where we wrap up today's episode. Remember to send us your feedback via email businessexpress@nta.gov.ng. You can also reach us through our Twitter, and the handle is NTA News Now. And don't forget to use the hashtag BizX showing on your screen. Until we come your way next week, Monday, I am Muplang Dakok.